honesty about HIV get in the way of having a pop at an already very stigmatized group of people, he tweeted back to the National AIDS Trust, which most people would not do, not an apology. He said, "You mean, why aren't jokes factually accurate? Because they're jokes. I don't hold the same worldview as my jokes. Most people get that." Then later, he jumps back on Twitter and doesn't backpedal. He even goes farther. He says all jokes should be banned before someone else gets offended. And then he ends the evening with, "I have an important message for anyone offended by my jokes. Please don't be. Hope that helps." Carlene, what do you think of his Twitter? Oh, wait, he actually tweeted again. "I wish I had a pound for every time I offended someone." Wait, I do. What do you think of his Twitter rant?
You know what, Ricky Gervais, this is typical Ricky. He will not back down. And the more you attack him, the more he's going to double down on the joke. Quite frankly, I'll be honest, I find this less offensive than the Kathy Griffin thing, holding out the decapitated head of Donald Trump. Hollywood and a lot of the Hollywood comedians, so to speak, have gotten really vile, really vicious, really nasty, and the attacks, mostly against some of the pro-Trump people, have just intensified. They've just gotten really nasty out there and somehow feel they can justify that. This, for someone whose family member died of AIDS, wouldn't be funny, and it's good to attack him on that, but the guy is not going to back down. That's his typical MO.
Michael, you know, Ricky tweeted out, "You mean, why aren't jokes factually accurate?" Do you think they have to be?
Well, no, I don't think so. I think what the objective here is to grab a lot of attention, and you get a lot of people talking about him, and everyone is. I mean, this is the gentleman who said that offense is the collateral damage of freedom of speech, and it's not. You know, people can be funny without being offensive. You know, you look at the comedians like, Jerry Seinfeld, that kind of. There are people can be funny without being offensive in this nature, and there is a line. I mean, there's off-color humor, and then there's a sort of a line. And I think one of the most, a characteristic of a very good comic is to know where that line is and not to cross it. He crosses it. I mean, the fact that he's putting this on Twitter is obviously an attempt to gain attention, and he succeeded. And that's what these guys. Kathy Griffin did the same thing with the Trump issue.
He's very, very active on Twitter. I follow Ricky Gervais, so he's tweeting all the time. Chris, your thoughts on this? Did he go over the line?
No, I don't think so. I feel like, I know that there's comedians will say they're constantly feeling for the line, but there's, I know you were saying, Michael, about Jerry Seinfeld. He's not overtly rude in his jokes. He doesn't swear, but oftentimes his jokes have a victim. And I think a lot of times we're poking fun at people or we're trying to laugh about something. And I think that there's a range somewhere where you've got an uncomfortable topic like AIDS, like a disease, and then you find a way to make someone laugh in a sort of uncomfortable way, and I think that's hilarious. I found it funny, and I don't think that people should, you have a right to be offended, and you have a right to say something to him about it if you want to, but I feel like the sort of oversensitivity and PC mentality is making it harder and harder to do comedy. I love this, the tweet that he made, all jokes should be banned before someone else gets offended, because I think, honestly, I know, we could say, oh, what have we lost in a world where we don't make fun of each other anymore, but we've lost the ability to laugh at one another and then thus laugh at ourselves. I know, Carlene, you mentioned, sorry, I will let you speak, the idea was someone with a family member who had AIDS. I don't have anyone like that. I've had a lot of family members die of cancer. If you could find a way to make me laugh about cancer, I would be happy about that.
The one thing I think, if you take a guy like Bill Maher, who made that horrendous joke about Ivanka Trump, it seems there's an underlying nastiness. I don't know if you're familiar with the joke, but I just can't even describe it here.
Okay.
But he said something that implied something very negative between Trump and his daughter.
Well, Trump kind of said, I'd date her if she wasn't my daughter, so let's see.
But that was a stupid thing to say. But
it's out there.
But the way Bill Maher went at it, I found that just unbelievably disgraceful. and on top of him using the N-word later on as a joke. So there you go. I mean, there's this nastiness underlying.
But Ricky Gervais doesn't tend to have that nastiness about him. I mean, if you look at some of the shows that he's done, it's uncomfortable, but it's kind of like he's the butt of the joke.
Well, he has done, I mean, he's done some of the award shows where, I think it was Robert Downey Jr., where he was quite direct about the Betty Ford Clinic and his addictions and being in county jail. And again, I'm not necessarily sure that crosses the line.
That's funny.
But it is funny. But I think that there is that sort of line you have to be careful about. I mean, there's a story that David, I'm from Belfast in Ireland, that I read in the Belfast newspaper.
Okay.
And there was a story where a woman attended one of the Ricky Gervais concerts, and she had lost her child about 3 or 4 months before that, and he started telling, he didn't know that she was there, but started telling dead baby jokes. And it was a line. So, you know, if that tells me anything, it tells me there is a line. And she was offended by this. Now somebody's giving her the tickets. I know the argument, well, why go if you're going to be offended by? But at the same time, I think that shows that there is a line. There's something that we have,
and you have the right to be offended.
Absolutely.
But you don't have the right to shut it down.
No.
Right?
You had 2 women, a lesbian couple, at a comedy event. I think it was a Canadian.
I think it was in Vancouver.
Yeah, they went after the comic because he was making lesbian jokes. And they dragged him in, I think they dragged him in front of a Human Rights Commission.
Yeah.
So we have these situations. Comedy is in the eye of the beholder,
I just
of the
think
listener.
that life is dark and scary and sad at times. You might as well laugh at it so you can just get through it.
I want to bring up how life is dark and scary sometimes. We're just going to move on to this next story. This is interesting. There is a pilot project right now called Project Drive-Thru that is going on in Burlington. A cop has initiated this. 38 fast food restaurant chains in Burlington looking for drinking drivers, and they're teaching them how to identify and what to do with drinking. If you see a drunk person or someone that's stoned going through your drive-thru, Carlene, I would think that you would know. Common sense would tell you call 911, and you wouldn't have to be trained. But what do you think of this initiative? Should we adopt it everywhere?
You know, I don't think they should be forcing drive-through fast food employees to have the responsibility of stopping of calling the police and alerting them. Yes, if there's a really outlandish incident where this person's clearly drunk, you want to do that. I don't know how you give them the driver's license, because you have to get out of the
well, you can see it when they pull up.
Oh, you can?
Well, yeah, sure, because you can look out.
You can see the driver's
when they're
license.
driving away.
I'm not sure, but I just find it weird. Why is it the responsibility of these employees now to hunt down drunk drivers? I just find the whole thing weird. It's the job of the police.
Michael?
Well, my initial reaction was I go right into that whole notion of, it's like East Germany now. Everybody's taking pictures, everybody's watching it. But when I look at it and you step back from this, it actually makes sense. I think it's everyone's responsibility. If you see somebody driving drunk on the Don Valley Parkway or the 401, I mean, I think we have a responsibility to report that. If we see what happened a year and a half ago or so with the 3 children and their grandparents, this is socially unacceptable behavior. The story itself indicates that, nobody will be forced to submit an official report or anything else of that nature. And, why are they putting in place a program? Well, there's an actual interview with somebody who worked at Tim Hortons who saw somebody who was intoxicated and didn't report it and let them go because they didn't know why. So it sets in place sort of a protocol that says if you see this kind of thing, report it. And my question is, why wouldn't we?
Chris, we're going to wrap this up in 20 seconds. Can you do?
I think that they should provide them with the training, so if only not to obligate them, but to ensure that they got a little bit of that backbone and so, at least a criteria to look at to say, should I bother interrupting this person's life and calling the cops right now, or should I just give them their fries and say goodbye?
The other quick thing is they could come back and say, hey, you outed me to the cops, and that person's now in jeopardy.
No, that's an interesting way to look at it, but I think, we have to be responsible for, other people out on the roads. When we see something, you have to say something, but maybe that's just me. I want to talk about what's going on in Bill Cosby's world. Wow, we've heard from the jurors on who the holdouts were, and there were apparently just a couple of them, but you will not believe what Bill Cosby has now announced that he's going to do via his legal team. We'll get to that after we take a look at the drive with our